Suomela. And Sandra was my colleague in positive psychology. She did a master's in London. She's from Finland, the happiest country in the world. You're going to explain that for us, right? Well, let me make a question, which is from the masters. First thing, in a scale of happiness, Sandra, from -2 to +10, how happy are you?
Ooh, just at this moment, thanks to this wonderful moment before this, the day, I would say 9+.
9+? Woo!
Yeah,
now
9+.
10. Let's see if you get to 10 in the end of the interview. Oh, that's fantastic. Great. I'm going to ask, so you come from Finland, happiest country in the world. You study masters in positive psychology. You have healthy relationships because I know you a bit and I know you have very good relationships. And also you are beautiful inside out. So,
thank you.
How lucky is this? How much is genetic your happiness? How much is environmental? Could you answer that? What do you think?
Oh, well, first of all, I just want to thank you for this opportunity to be here. I've never been in any place where there's actually questions from me. So this is very interesting experience. So I'm very, very excited. I'm trying to calm myself down. I'm noticing that I'm so excited that I tend to always speak super fast. And because I'm Finnish, English is not my mother tongue. So if you don't understand, please just shout out of like, Sandra, what the hell you're talking about? So
we're getting everything. We're getting everything.
So it's very interesting because I remember that we had this exact discussion with you, Vivian, on a lunch break, probably on MapCP, about the happiest country in the world, and it's very interesting from me because I always, even though it's statistically happiest country in the world, and I would say that the system in Finland works very well. There's no, basically because of the government and because of the support, there was no people on the streets. Everything is free. Education is free. Healthcare is free. Everything is basically free because we pay a lot of taxes. But I would say because there's only 5 million people living in Finland. And interestingly, in terms of the suicide rate, we are almost the highest ones after China or Japan. And so it's quite like a complex question because I would say it can be statistically happiest country in the world, but because things are so well in terms of my opinion, and I'm now talking from my point of view, so not from every Finnish person, people tend to make problems out of nothing because there's always this kind of approach to stress about something. And Finnish people as a community, it's very individualistic. So people are very high achievers. They don't want help. They don't accept help. It's very, very much me and my own self and my individuality. So it's not traditional family culture like in Italy, for example, or in Russia or in southern countries. It's very individualistic. But in terms of the support that, for example, I, as a student in Finland before master's experience, was that we basically, Finnish government is giving every month for free 500 euros just to support your studies on top of the studies being free. So basically the 500 is for food, and you can also have a loan. Maybe this is way too politic now. Now I'm talking politics now, but
that exists this place in the world, isn't it?
Yeah, but
it should be everywhere.
Exactly, and
so
but in terms of the happiness.
So basically, people don't struggle with the first needs of the pyramid of Maslow, isn't it? Which is the needs.
Exactly.
So they can evolve then as a society, maybe. I don't know. Is that the point? The thing?
Yeah, that was very well put. Exactly. It's the first needs are provided for free. So people tend to live in a very comfortable state throughout their whole life because everything is provided to you. But then there comes this paradox of, because it's too comfortable, people are uncomfortable because the structure of life is so provided by comfort from the external. And then people try to fulfill their actual self-actualization needs by being super high achievers, by competing a lot. There's a lot of competition, and for example, the employment rate, there's a lot of unemployed people, even though there's only 5 million people, but especially among young people, because there's no places, because every single person is a perfectionist, if I'm generalizing Finnish mentality. Personally, I'm very different.
I hope they don't do. They're not your audience.
But I would say that personally, even though of course I'm from Finland, I come from Finland, but in terms of my own worldview and my approach to life and myself or social interactions, I'm very different, or according to what other people say and how I feel. For example, I'm living in London now, and I feel so much more comfortable here. I really feel like I'm able to be myself. I'm able to be loud and be a bit woo. And it's not looked down, because in Finland it's very much, oh, I don't want to disturb anyone. Oh, okay, I need to be quiet and timid, and I just don't want to disturb anyone. I just need to take care of my own business. Maybe this isn't answering to your question at all, but it's a complex question in terms of, because it's
amazing,
the happiest country in the world, but in terms of mental health, there's a lot of problems, I would say.
Interesting. Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you very much for your very complete. I know you like to talk, so it was amazing. You explain a lot. Well, let me ask you then my last question, then I'm going to pass it on to interact with the girls. What can you do for us then, with all these recipes that you have?
Oh, very good question. Very good question. I would say,
let's see them. Let's see on the go.
Well, I would say that probably what I mentioned before, I'm very much I'm seeing world and my life as a very temporary. So everything I do is temporary, and I'm always have this kind of mindset or philosophy that if I do something that makes me feel good during this moment, like this moment now with you guys, it's going to bring me to something which is aligned with myself in longer term basis. So I'm very self-aware of what's happening in physical wise, in mental wise. I'm very aware, but I would say, because I come from sports backgrounds, so embodiment and body mind relationship, and the kind of body awareness is very important for me. And also because I went through a 10-year eating disorder period, so I went to therapy and I learned a lot from that. So I would say that's a very meaningful part for me, which is part of me that I am today, but I'm using that as a benefit. So I'm very grateful actually that I had that, because now I am the person that I am now, and I hope to spread this energy to the people around me. But probably answering to your question is that what I can give to others is actually to just human to human connection. No matter if it's as Sandra, as a coach, I would say as a coach, I am the human being that I am. I'm not able to separate those two, because I'm a human being as well. So I would say what I could provide to this world is connection and listening, and actually making people to feel heard and seen. Hopefully.
Namaste. Welcome to the club. Let's go wild now. Girls, who has the first question? Just to organize a bit, don't go that full wild yet. Who, I think Zoe's already mic off.
I don't have a question yet, but I did want to say that was beautiful. I really like your message there. It's lovely.
Thank you, Zoe. Thank you very much. I really appreciate this. I'm so happy to be part of this now. I'm so happy. So thank you.
Hi, Sandra. I wanted to ask you a question. Yeah. Can you give an introduction to your book and what's it about?
Sorry, to my book?
There's no book.
Oh, sorry.
Aha! You became famous. You wrote a book and you don't know about it.
Sorry,
This is a beautiful
self-actualization. That
maybe this will inspire something.
But I would say this is a wonderful moment. I'm very positively shocked at the moment. I'm taking this as a compliment.
You become a heroine already. Just for being in the happy 9+. Who's 9+ in the middle of this isolation thing, you know?
No, it's 15+. But I would say that a lot of what has been influenced into my, maybe I would call it as a life philosophy, is definitely Yannick Jacob. Not sure if you have heard about him. Well, there's a huge list of names, but I'm just gonna mention some of them. And there's this wonderful man called Dr. Joe Dispenza, which is it's basically a lot of information from neurology and biology, and how we can, through our thinking, how we can change how we are feeling, and a lot of existential philosophy and quantum physics as well. So all these energies.
Dispenza.
Yeah, exactly. Dr. Joe Dispenza.
I'm writing notes.
Oh, good. Also, I can. Is it helpful if I write in the end just some names that might be, because those are honestly life transforming, I would say.
Yes, please do.
Please do.
I can write the names. It's easier because now it's just that. Otherwise, I would be holding a huge monologue about these men or women that I'm inspired of.
Your spirits coming around.
And sometimes I even feel bad because I'm very integrative. So if I hear or see something meaningful, if I feel in my body that something is super meaningful, I'm immediately adapting and integrating that into my own thinking. And then when I'm speaking, I really actually feel bad because I feel like I just stole this guy's thoughts and now I'm saying it out loud.
You're promoting. Let's be positive. You're not stealing, you're promoting, right?
Exactly. Good.
What tools do you have at the moment to identify your own needs for mental wellness? But also I'm curious about how you're supporting others. I'm sure we all have a friend or a partner or family member who we see struggling during this moment, and perhaps us ourselves dip in and out. So just what tools or what ways are you reaching out to other people and kind of creating a community?
Very important one. I would say, thank you first of all for bringing up the question. I would say both, because I work as a holistic life coach, but I'm also working with myself, because I always believe that through own self-transformation, the transformation happens outside. So I would say the tools that I am using both myself and with others around me, with the people that I love, or with you guys now, I would say definitely self-awareness. So checking in many times per day. Sports is my lifestyle. I wouldn't say that I exercise. I would say sports is my lifestyle. So I'm using my body as a tool for myself. And then just listening and being present with other people, observing them, but giving them space. Sometimes it's a lot easier. I would say it would be a lot easier if this would be other way around with you guys than, for example, with my boyfriend. I think sometimes I don't give that much space for him. It's very different. But I would say I'm aiming to give space and actually listen to other people. And even though it might sound very simple, but listen other people as if I'm listening that for the first time in my life. And I'm going to use my boyfriend as an example again, but we have been together for 8 years. And I always notice that I'm listening him through the lenses of 8 years, not through the lenses of this moment or through the lenses of his experience now. I'm always operating from my judgments or assumptions of, okay, I've been knowing this person for 8 years, so I already know what he means, even though actually I don't know, because every day we learn something different, even though it will be subconscious, but every day we are different, physically, mentally, because everything's like, brains are like sponge, even though we wouldn't consciously do that. I believe that I am taking in so much, or human beings in general are taking in so much information and feelings, that next day they might feel different. Now I'm probably very much off track. Did I answer to your question at all?
No, that's fantastic. And I want to link with this book. That should be good for you. Have you read it? From our colleague? Charles. Remember Charles, our colleague?
Yeah,
Have you
Charlie.
watched the interview with him? Because this put the side of men that we don't see as girls, you know. So it's very important, because sometimes we think, as you say, we think things from our mind, and we don't understand each other, you know. And this is very, very beautiful. You should read that. It's exactly what you're saying, you know. We should listen, you know, learn to listen. We talk a lot, we girls.
We talk a lot, and I need to add one more thing about judgments, because I was participating in this self-transformation workshop in a charity that I work as a volunteer coach. It's called GRIT, Breakthrough Program. So they deliver transformation workshops for young people in East London, and I was part of their workshop as a trainer, as a training volunteer coach for the young people. And there was something very important that well, there was a lot of important stuff, but especially in terms of judgments and assumptions, that I learned that it is that we are all the time judgmental, because that's a human nature. If we go to Tube and we don't even know these people, we are all the time making a story for themselves in our own heads. It's like, oh, this person looks like he has done sports because he looks like that, or like we are all the time doing the judgments, but that's okay, allowing that to be there, but not attaching our feelings or thoughts to the judgment. Because I'm always, when people are saying, I'm not judgmental, I don't want to be judged, blah, blah, blah. I would say personally, from my point of view, or from the trainer's point of view, I think it was very striking that actually it's happening all the time. It's kind of this internal dialogue that happens internally all the time. But then we can always aim to understand, but we can never understand other people, because we are not them. I am me, and I am in my own thinking and feeling as Sandra, and I can always facilitate empathy and listen and observe, but I can actually never understand where this person comes from which world he operates from, because I'm not him or her. Also probably very off track again.
No, that's fantastic, because I wanted to ask about coaching as well. So you're kind of describing some skills of a coach, which is listening. And that's the hardest parts, I think, of the course, is to practice this, isn't it? We tend to talk a lot, and I'm doing that again. So, and it's an interview, so I should shush my mouth. But basic listening skills is something that we have to practice a lot in the coaching, right? So yeah, it's very important to put it up. And I'm listening now. Anybody else want to make a question? Mike, Zoe, have you done your question? I'm not sure. We just interacted.
I haven't got a question, but I do want to comment on what you just said about the judgmental kind of approach. I really liked what you said, because you're right. I mean, from my perspective, it's completely natural to be making judgments all the time, because we're trying to assess the environment and the people in that environment, but yet, and we can, if we're not careful, because this is a trap that I've fallen into, then become quite judgmental of ourselves for having these judgments. And so there's this kind of thing that I'm working on, which is to be non-judgmental, even when I notice myself being judgmental. So I might be judgmental about something I'm doing, and then I might notice that judgment, and then I might try to be non-judgmental or accepting of the judgment. So it's kind of this juggling act.
Oh, completely. What a wonderful comment. Really, I really can relate to that. It is as if when we are as if we are self-executing, like self-love or something, that I'm doing self-care, but we can also execute self-care of like, okay, I need to do this and this and this and this and meditate and run and eat healthy and do this. And then all of a sudden we notice that actually I'm executing self-care. I'm not actually taking care of myself. It was something that
yeah, you can become so, well, it's a bit like what you were describing in this Finnish mentality about needing to be the best version of yourself. And I know myself, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and that's where the judgments toward myself come in. But you're absolutely right that if you don't, if you're so sort of hooked on what you should be doing to feel better, you start judging yourself, and then without realizing it, you've started to go down a road that's not so healthy.
Exactly, completely. And this is, I just want to acknowledge that this situation, because I love asking questions from people as a person, as a coach, both. And I'm constantly feeling very, I wouldn't say negatively weird, but I'm feeling that I'm taking so much space because I'm so curious for all of you that I'm seeing now in the gallery view. I'm like, I want to ask questions from you all the time because I'm very curious. And so this is an interesting experience to talk this much, and especially because I of course I love to talk, and there's a lot of thoughts coming, and then I'm also aware of the time. So it's this very interesting feeling that I'm experiencing. Just wanted to say that because I want to be transparent.
Like that. I like that.
I've got a question.
Yeah, hey.
So you say you're like on the 9 bar of happiness, right? And this life philosophy that you have. For someone who's not quite there yet, what would you recommend like to practice to kind of up their scale in their bar to kind of aim to get there? Is there something that you practice?
I think this is very much related to this kind of embracing the dark side of positive psychology, which I'm very passionate about, of approaching yourself as a human being as a whole. So because I believe that because we cannot be positive, I would say it's a yin yang. There's negative or positive, or even I would like to approach emotions as neutral. There's no negative or positive. They are just emotions, and that's okay, because otherwise positive wouldn't be positive anymore. If we would be positive all the time, then that would be just new normal. So I would say acknowledging yourself as a whole, and acknowledging if there's a struggle, for example, if I'm experiencing a challenge, I'm acknowledging that and being aware of that, and letting it be there, as if kind of like in mindfulness, but then not resisting that, because then my complete focus, my brains are so attached to that. I don't want to feel like that. I don't want to feel this uncomfortable state. Well, then I definitely do. It's kind of like, don't eat chocolate. Of course I eat chocolate then. It's kind of this, that allowing that feeling to be there, and accept that that's at the moment part of yourself. And even though it's at the moment part of yourself, it doesn't mean that it's gonna last until this world ends. And I would say my life philosophy, definitely, I've always been very positive naturally, but that has been a problem personally for me, because I've always learned when it comes to my culture or the family that I grew up, there was always this kind of value of, if you're not gonna die, don't complain. So if you're not dying, everything is good. The most importantly, you need to look good. So that's been the learning for me, one of those learnings. But as an example, I always used to, if I was ever experiencing any discomfort or challenges with myself, I was suppressing it, ignoring it, and then doing very self-harming coping mechanisms, just like 10-year eating disorder. That was my way. I was always happy. But then when I started to recover, it was horrible. Like, all of these uncomfortable emotions just evoked and came out because I couldn't control them anymore with food or with alcohol or smoking or something else, like just bad coping mechanisms. And then I just realized that actually I don't even distinct negative emotions because I've never learned to experience them. So that was definitely something that I would say in my genes, my approach to life was like, oh, everything's wonderful. But I would say that's also very disruptive, because the negative labeled as negative emotions and positive emotions, I would say that's a whole, it's like a package. But now I really want to answer to your question. I'm again probably going off track, but in terms of my life philosophy, or when you said that if you're not quite there yet, I would say that's a lifelong journey. There's no ending point, because it's kind of this hedonic treadmill that positive psychology speaks, that we always adapt to negative, we always adapt to positive. So let's say you have this vision of your in your mind that, okay, if I'm gonna have this or do this, then I'm gonna be happy, and then you're gonna adapt to that, and then you want something more, because it's an ongoing journey, which is at the same time kind of like this life and death meaning in life, that okay, today I'm very happy and I'm so happy about it, but tomorrow I might not be. And actually that just makes the variance between uncomfortable and comfortable feelings, I find that very beautiful. To kind of, I can cry this evening, I'm so down and I'm wallowing and I'm just like I don't know, experiencing a lot of negative emotions, but then the next day it's such a relief, because it doesn't, even from neurological point of view or biological point of view, the body is actually only able to hold a feeling under 2 minutes. But if we get attached to that and our focus goes to that resistance of that uncomfortable feeling, then it's in our hands, then it's gonna stay. So kind of probably my keywords would say allowing and just perceiving yourself as a human being, as a whole of everything, of discomfort, comfort, happiness, horrible moments, and yeah, everything, I would say. Very long monologue. I'm sorry, I took so much space.
No, that's very interesting. No, and I had read a book, I don't remember which one yet, but it was very much similar to what you're saying on this whole idea of what is positive, and actually, you know, maybe sometimes that idea of being positive is you're kind of lying to yourself. You're trying to be positive, whereas you should just be who you are and just, you know, live the feelings, and as you say, not hold them in, and just fully experience what you're feeling at the present without holding on to things that can then harm you later. So yeah, no, that was really good. Thank you for your answer.
Thank you so much. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. Runa, yeah. Runa. Yes, thank you, Runa. I'm not sure if you have heard, all of you, about, I'm talking from Yannick Jacobs' point of view, who has like existential coaching business, and he always talks about the kind of life and death, and that like even a baby, how the baby even at some level realizes that he's or she is going to die, that in a way life is actually very meaningless, because we are going to die. Everyone's going to die, so it doesn't make any sense it's really, we always want to make meaning in life, but there's no meaningful life, because it's meaningless in a way. And I don't want to sound sad or, you know, like anything like that, but that's just, it is what it is. And then what kind of relationship we construct to that idea, or in any emotion, we always have a relationship or meanings. Like I said, there's always a meaning to something. It's not actually something externally which is the problem, which triggers us internally, because it's us that trigger us. If I'm getting mad to my boyfriend, again using him as an example, he's gonna be so happy for this. But if there's something that he says, I can't know from which world he operates from. But if that's triggering me and I'm getting angry, that's my responsibility, because I am getting angry in me, not in him. But that's the trigger. It's kind of this, and it's so much more easier said than done. I'm still getting angry at him. I'm still getting triggered. I'm always, and this is the conversation of life, even though how much we know intellectually or how much we read, but it's so interesting how differently we experience everything. And it's always a journey. From my point of view, it's always a journey, and this aspect of being self-aware of what's happening in me, or if I'm seeing a movie and I'm getting triggered by the movie, that tells more about me than the movie.
Yeah. But there is something beautiful in the way that at another level, people are experiencing the real, experiencing the appreciation of the beauty of a tree, the flower, the breath, you know, the simple act of kindness. That is the thing that's the awakening the souls. It's the soul. to me, the world is like John Hicks, I think, wrote about the veil of soul making. I can only conceive of it in that way, even at times of bleakness when you wonder about the possibility of a soul. But I think that makes sense, because when you see the world awakening and people awakening and responding to acts of profound kindness, that's overwhelming. The true kindness.
That's so beautiful, and that's very there's so many conversations going on now. It's so very inspiring. Thank you. And I would say that kind of even during this time, and even there exists the kind of automatic anxiety towards the death. Topic, but I would say people still, because it's my responsibility to see what I see, because I only can see and hear what I hear and see. Because if I'm focusing on the negative, on all these panicking media, blah, if I give focus, and that's my responsibility, if I give focus to that, then I see that. But if I do give focus to something else, then I see that. It's kind of this, I'm not sure how to call it. Is it a law of attraction? But it's just the focus and my mindset. Where do I put my focus, and how do I see the world? Through which lenses? Is it from the lenses of possibility, like what's happening now in terms of everything with George Floyd? There's like horrible stuff happening, but do I see that as a possibility to something better, or do I see that as this whole world just sucks, everyone just sucks, and everything is ruined? Or do I see that as a hope for the better change to happen, where I definitely can contribute in, and it's my responsibility to contribute and to see the world through the lenses which work for me. And I would say everyone needs their own lenses, because not everything works for everyone. And focusing on what works for you specifically might be necessary something that doesn't work for anyone, even though media is always emphasizing that you should think positive and smile and it can work short term and it can be superficially good, but then focus on what works for you. Because we have been born with, like, a baby is born without any therapy. Like, baby is born perfect, but then the program that the baby is developing throughout the whole life is different, but that's possible to change, because it's in the thinking and it's in the internal dialogue. But a baby is perfect when it's born. Everyone loves each other. Babies love every single type of human race. But then the program has been developed, and then that's something that we can always address. And
Can I just mention one thing, one insight I had actually? Am I in the screen? No, not yet.
Yeah, you are.
Okay. Well, I'm not big. I want to be big. Okay,
you're big for me.
Hello. Okay, no, it's just an insight because unfortunately, recently I lost my mom, and usually people have sad experiences with that. But for me, I lost the fear of dying, and because I feel that my mom is there, and I'm getting to her one day, and there's this feeling of like she opened a path for me, and I have no fear anymore, and therefore I start enjoying life a bit more. So I just want to add this bit, because you say everybody feeling death, but death is, as you said, is a part of life. Let's say we're all gonna die, you know. So I just want to add my experience, and once I lost this fear of dying, my life becomes so much more pleasurable. So it's just something I want to share as an insight, because until I think you lose someone, you don't experience this thing. And I haven't lost anybody that close, you know. For me, it was the first experience. So just want to share this bit, that we can be positive even about death, you know. We can grow with that.
And thank you for sharing that. It really seems like it's kind of that, this, like, the time that we have left, that let's make the best out of it, kind of, you know, like, let's
say.
Exactly.
I agree. I after my dad died in my arms, actually, my immediate response, I asked myself as I'm holding him, what am I in? And my response was, seize the day, suck the marrow out of life, almost. But also more recently, it's kind of like where I think some human beings are actually is how they're left after death. So it's not always about death. It's about having life, and what are you doing with this life? And then the life in the absence of other people is actually, so it's not always about, as you're right, Vivian, not about the experience of death and the dying, but actually how to live.
So easy to look, what's the wrong, what is it that it's wrong there? What's wrong outside of me? Rather than actually look into my own self and just ask that, who am I as a person, especially because I'm changing every day, that actually just change my eyes kind of on the opposite direction. Because it's so much more easier to just look outside, even in terms of coaching. It's very nourishing, and it's very nourishing to coach someone who might probably have exactly similar questions in his mind that I have about myself, but I see that completely differently. But if I ask the questions from myself, whew, that's tough. Then the whole game just changes. And I would say one I need to mention about Dr. Joe Dispenza, what he always he says about that if we are too much in love with our past selves, we never know what's the unknown future, what we are in the unknown future, because we are always in the known, something very, it's safety, comfortable, yes, fight or flight, survival mode. We want to feel secure and comfortable, even though even that's uncomfortable. But then we are already living in the knowing of our past, because the future is all the time happening. Like now, we are already probably 45 minutes later in the future that we were in the beginning. We are already there, and we can know what's going to happen, and we can always create the unknown future. But that's so scary. It's very scary, because I've always had these habits and these patterns and these thoughts. So I really think that I'm right with them. But then actually every second I have a new possibility to change how I approach myself. How do I see myself? And that's automatically changing how I am perceived through others' eyes. But the unknown is definitely also a lifelong work.
There's something there about even, the more we get to know ourselves is not having too much of an attachment to what we think it is that we know about ourselves, because that will change if we let it, and that will be beautiful.
Exactly.
To be the expert of ourselves, I do think we need to be in relation to other people.
I think sometimes people see themselves in us, like when we are at a certain crossroad, and they may see something that they have passed through, and they may be able to give words of comfort or some form of help, and in that way I think they can be experts of us in that way.
Wow, really, really insightful, actually. That's something that I've never personally thought before. And
so remember that we do what we do in coaching, which is the feedback, and then we just repeating what people say to us, and people get mind blown by that, because they are not aware of what their own words and what they said about themselves. So I think what Fanny said is very interesting, because as coaches we have to do that constantly. And if you get coached, it's powerful for yourself as well, just to listen to somebody to repeat what you just said, this awareness. So you found out about an incredible world about yourself and you didn't even know about that, So yes, Fanny, I think that's the coach's role, to do what you just said. Just to remind you, Sandra, you said, I never heard about you. Do that all the time. As a coach.
And and even saying, let's say, even what you said just now, Fanny, that it's when you share something, because first you need to share it with yourself. In a way, you share something with yourself in your thinking probably, but then saying that experience actually out loud, and then even saying that out loud with an existence of another human being, it's huge. It's very different to say with another human being's presence, just because it makes it much more real. Or I'm not sure, what's your experience in that? And then because we always have this our own way of thinking and feeling, and then through others, but also through ourselves. And then because sometimes I think even sharing experiences in different times of our lives, but it's, maybe this is a very weird example, but let's say I'm listening to a song of a heartbreak, but I've never experienced a heartbreak myself. Well, then the next year I experienced the heartbreak, and then I listen the exact same song. It's completely different. I see and hear that in a completely different way, because I have experienced that myself. And then it's mind-blowing when that happens in also many other things in life. I'm not sure if you have some similar examples applied to different situations when you have experienced that.
I just want to remind Fanny, how about the psychometrics that we did some, isn't it? That is also self-awareness, isn't it? Is it something related to what you said? I just reminding and linking to what you just said. Yeah, psychometrics helps with awareness as well. She did the VIA and the resilience one, isn't it? And the
so like when I saw what the test was telling me, it was like it gave a sort of very concrete explanation for like why I was feeling the way I did. And a lot of times I'd respond a certain way to a situation, but I wouldn't be able to understand like the reasons behind why I act that certain way, like with my personality and certain traits that I have. So that's, that was really, that helped me understand more like about myself.
Wow. Well, I don't want to share any opinion or anything, but that's just, for me, that seems great.
You enjoying the moment.
Wow, a very insightful journey.
So how would you wrap it up, Sandra? It's on you.
Ooh, uh-oh.
Crying, maybe. How are you in the scale of happiness now? Let's say you're 9+.
If there is 20, I would say 20. I'm very inspired. I'm so inspired, and I'm so positive, overwhelmed of you guys, and I think I'm already frustrated that this is ending. Or
no, you always can come back to us. You're always going to be.
I'm experiencing some type of loss here now. So really, I want to thank you.
That's the downside of your 9+, isn't it? You said your whole thing. So
is it a downside? Do we have to judge it? The loss is okay. Lean.
But this experience, I think I want to wrap it up for just being grateful for this moment with all of you, your space, everything that you create, because we created this space together, our transaction, our listening, observation, and contributing, everything. And I really want to acknowledge all of you. I'm looking at all of you now like this. Okay.
But the whole gallery then. I can put the whole gallery and see them.
So really, it's. I feel like I really want to.
Scared to touch. Touch, I might lose everyone. Just leave it like that. Okay. Shall I? Okay, I think exit full screen. Oh no! Oh no! I'm scared that I can lose you all. So let's keep it like that. Say your message.
Maybe I want to wrap it up in a way that I just want to ask about your current feelings. What are you experiencing now? Every one of you who wants to contribute.
In a grade? Or what? I'm a 10. Hey! Rama, welcome back. You've been spying us there behind the scenes. The only man spying us. Welcome back, Rama. Say something. What's your grade then?
Yeah, hi, thank you. Yeah, I'm just listening.
Just listening. Okay. Namaste for you.
Namaste.
I found this a beautifully emotional experience. I feel very connected with all of you. you're talking about things that really resonate with me and the journey that I'm on at the moment as well. So, you know, that idea of, you know, when you're on a journey, you find things and you pull towards people and messages that are absolutely reinforcing that journey. And, you know, there were a couple of moments there where I almost thought I might cry out of positivity. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Flower for you all.
Are we still on video? Are we still on video?
Yeah, I bet in the positive because I haven't studied much mainstream psychology. Although my father's psychiatrist, my mom's psychologist, so I've been educated with the concepts, but I didn't read much. So for me, I believe 100% in positive psychology. I believe that everyone can be positive, but it's very hard to make people believe in this idea. So I get people even angry with me, and I think we discussed that in the masters that and I don't know, that there's a point that I cannot deal much with that, and I just like don't talk about it. But I can see that you go beyond that. You're talking about the dark side and all these emotions and things. So it's interesting, this combination. But when you talk just about positive psychology, you get a lot of people angry, and they don't accept this idea of just you can be positive and you can do this and invest in the positives. So yeah, well done for going further, going beyond, and combining a bit more of the mainstream psychologists. And I think it's important.
And maybe even kind of that reaction from people that also tells more about them, and maybe that's their part of the journey that they are going through in their lives, that happiness or positivity triggers anger or resistance because of things that has happened to them in the past, that it's their approach. But if people are angry around me, that's their anger. It might be that I get triggered from my boyfriend one more time, but like it's not my like if people are angry with me because of what I think about the world, because they have their own views of the world, but I can't be angry to someone, or I'm trying not to be angry to someone, because if I get angry to someone's worldview, that just tells something about my worldview, if this makes any sense. But I really get what you mean, Viviana. Also, I can very much relate to that. People are like, positive psychology.
Yeah, people throwing tomatoes on you because you have to make them positive. Positive, where?
Also, from what you guys are saying about positive psychology, I think that I think there's room for everything in this world, and at times certain things help, and at other times they don't. But the thing about being around people who are in a state like Vivian is of positive psychology can be such an amazing healing experience in itself for people who are in a difficult place and unable to access that within themselves. So, you know, just the presence of each other in different states at times is healing in itself. Because, you know, we're not, I don't think any human being is in one constant state, but at times people have been traumatized, people have been through all kinds of things, and it's difficult to even reach an equilibrium. And at those times, you know, in particular, I think it's just wonderful to have people, you know, other people around that are not in the same state, basically, as well.
Thank you, that I'm useful somehow.
I
thought you'd be cutting me because I'm too positive.
No.
What I learned from my father, who was a psychiatrist, is that the world needs more role models to get inspired. Because, I mean, basically, we need to see what we can produce, what we can be, and in our best. And that's what art is for, and that's all these things are for.
So long as you're leaving some space for your subjective experiences as well.
yeah, then comes the other side as well. But we cannot just invest in the negatives and forget the positives, and that's what positive psychology is about. You know, a lot have been invested in the negatives, and we have been feeding and feeding and feeding, and we haven't evolved much in terms of what we can produce as human beings. And there's a vast world up there that we can be. And I think maybe I'm so happy that Michelle said that somehow seeing from the pain there, if you see someone that's not in pain, that you resonate somehow and you get linked, and then maybe I can get there one day. So that's amazing. Thank you very much, because I the idea is not to suppress you and say that, don't do that, don't be yourself. The idea is to push you up. So to bring you from a downward spiral to an upward spiral, which broad and build theory from from positive psychology. So that's but it could somehow resonate aggressive, and thank you very much if you can see that. But I understand also the dark side. I understand that. I have empathy with the dark side. I've been in the dark side. Don't think I haven't been there. You know, I've been there. But when I realized I was cultivating the dark side, and it was a vicious cycle that I could not get out of that, because I was feeding that energy. You know, and I said, I don't want to be here. It's not me. You know, I just undressed that thing. I said, let me try investing one good emotion. This I can do. And then I realized that I was getting out of that cycle, the vicious cycle of being the negative and going positive. And I said, this is a choice. I can choose if I want to be in the dark side, or I can choose if I want to be the positive. And positive is working better for me. I feel happier if I'm in the positive. So I decided to go and feed my happy emotion. And that's what I do as a habit. I train, and all of a sudden I left behind all that old Vivian that was like feeding the negative emotions and suffering and dramas and things. And if I have to revisit, I will revisit. But there's a little moment, because then I have energy to come back to be that best that I can be going towards, because we always get better and better, right?
That's so beautiful.
That's the idea, I think, of what I study in positive psychology, and I agree with that and resonated that. But I really feel that a lot of colleagues, they were like suffering that, because they've been attached to they spiral. That was spiral. You attached to that. Kind of have some, you you like to be in that place of suffering and moaning over the experience and things. It's kind of addicting, Yeah, but I think you produce more when you can see yourself going out of that. You don't have to, but you can. It's an option.
And that you chose that option, and you were actually even like neurologically, you were starting to wire the brain towards what felt right for you, because the whole conversation about like epigenetics or the brain plasticity, that if we actually, because it's all like thinking and feeling and the synapses firing together. But then if, like you said, you chose to focus on what made you happy and what was the happy emotion, you started to do that more. So neurologically, your brains were actually transforming and forming new connections to the happy stage. And this is also something that Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about, but the whole epigenetics of how through our thinking, we actually can change the whole reality. But of course, it takes time. A lot of practice, like you said, you have made Vivian, it's now your habit. It's part of who you are as a person. And it definitely requires that. But if you want something, then it's like rather than fixing what's wrong, focusing on what works and not constantly fixing like the mainstream psychology kind of like, okay, let's focus on what we can fix here rather than what already works for you, even in coaching situation. Very beautiful, Vivian. I'm so happy for a journey.
I think, thank you. I think it's about linked to what you said about the comfortable zone that we are there, the person that we know we are, moaning about the problems and stuff, and going to the unknown, which is everything that we can build with our brains. We are unlimited in what we can, because we're still alive, and when we're still alive, we can do so much things. There's no limitations what we can do. When you die, maybe you have limitations, or maybe you go, we don't know, because maybe you go to another dimension that are even more powerful, I don't know. But So there's no limitations. The limitations inside our brain. We put limitations. We accommodate to certain habits and things. And once you start to see the mechanism, how it works, how every second, ever faster than the speed of light, our thoughts are making habits. And we have then become our behavior. And then become our emotions. And the way how we feel, how we perceive the world. So we have the power over this. Don't, I mean, you can, it's an option. You want to keep on working on which emotions, it's just a choice. But it's hard. I'm not saying that's easy. It's hard at the beginning, I'm telling you, because twisting the spiral from downwards towards the upward is the key thing that takes the baby step is the hardest one. Because we live with the habit of doing, repeating. And changing a thing is the hardest path, let's say, from the book that we had interviewed last week. But it's possible. It's possible. The little effort or the massive effort, let's say, for the baby step, that's going to bring you the best that you can be. Because then you start having a life of itself, the spiral. Once you do a little bit, little habits, and that's why we have the PPIs. Don't forget the PPIs. PPIs is positive psychology interventions. So there's little exercise, more than 200 types. There's books written about that. Kindness is one of the things. I remember Zoe saying about doing a blog about kindness last time. Kindness, love. There's so much exercise that we can do to help us to go and twist the spiral from negative to positive, and then have this outcome of higher performance. Some people, I had some students in yoga, I would say, you get better and better, increase your performance, and some students will say, I don't like the word performance, it's this tension, it looks like you're putting pressure over me. But it is possible that we improve the performance, you know, so it's just a whole universe that we all entitled to. Just go for it. Sorry to take over. So let's wrap up. What do you think? Much. So let's finish with a namaste. A huge thank you for you, Sandra, for being the star of the day.
Everyone, for individually, communally, globally. Thank you so much, everyone, for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I feel actually that everyone could be a star here. Everyone could be a guest lecturer and talk and lead this thing. We are so interested as human beings, isn't it? So namaste to everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.